Let's take a look at my top 25 size-inclusive knitting patterns inspired by one of my favorite YouTubers, Rachel Maksy. Hello everyone, and welcome to the Knitted by Whitney YouTube channel. I'm back with another size-inclusive pattern roundup video, and this one has a bit of a twist. I will admit this one was entirely a personal desire, and this might not appeal to everybody, but I really love this particular size-inclusive prompt because it's inspired by one of my favorite YouTubers, Rachel Maksy. I was having a bit of a week last week, and we're still in a bit of a funk because we're currently having some car trouble. But Friday night, Rachel had a new video out, and it just instantly cheered me up. And it reminded me that I've been collecting patterns inspired by her style probably for 6 months now. And I thought, I think I really want to record that video this weekend. So here I am recording my top 25 size-inclusive knitting patterns inspired by Rachel Maksy. I'm really excited about this list, and whether or not you are aware of her or not, I think you're going to enjoy this pattern roundup video because there's going to be some really fun patterns. Now, Rachel Maksy has been around YouTube for quite a while. She has about 1.5 million subscribers, which is incredible. It's very well deserved. She does wonderful content. She has a very cozy, very positive DIY, be yourself corner of the internet, and I absolutely love it. It brings me so much joy, and I am also really interested in her cosplay work as well because I also like to cosplay, but not nearly to the level that she does. But I found her, I think, back in the pandemic times, so 2021, I think. The first video of hers that I remember watching was when she created a bookshelf dress. And that sounds kind of funny to say out loud, but I'll put a link to the video below and I'll put a picture of it here. She made this incredible dress where she stamped what looked like a written page onto pieces of fabric and then created this incredible ruffle skirt. And then she created this like wearable bookshelf to put on her back, featuring titles that she just picked up from the secondhand store that people could just like take from her as if she was a mobile library. And it was so cute and so wholesome. And I instantly fell in love with her content. So I've been a consistent viewer since then. I think I've watched almost all of her videos. I've gone into the back catalog as well and watched quite a few, but she has a very large catalog. So if you haven't seen her, I do highly, highly recommend her content. But now that I've given you a little overview of Rachel Maksy, I wanted to get into these patterns. Now I have divided them into 5 different aesthetics because when I think of Rachel Maksy, I think of her as having 5 very distinct aesthetics other than her cosplay. I haven't taken into account the cosplays that she's done. So when looking at Rachel Maksy's styles, in the time that I have been following her, she seems to have a few distinct aesthetics. I have identified 5 that I'm going to share in this video that are applicable to the types of knitting patterns that I have found. So Rachel has a really wide style that goes in many different directions, but I sort of highlighted 5 distinct ones that are applicable to the knitting patterns that I found. So this is my interpretation of her style, not necessarily what she would call her style. Although the names that I've come up with for the different aesthetics are very much inspired by things that she has said or that she uses to refer to her own style as well. So I do take a little bit of inspiration from her own wording as well as coming up with my own, just to give an umbrella term to both her style that I'm inspired by and the knitting patterns that I have found that match that aesthetic. And I'm going to have mood boards for each of these aesthetics. I went through her Instagram and some of her YouTube, and I have highlighted some of her outfits that she has worn and posted that I feel really suit each of those aesthetics, and some of which I have found knitting patterns that are almost identical to the pieces that she wears, so I was really excited about some of those. So without further ado, let's get into this list and let's look at the first aesthetic. The first style aesthetic that Rachel Maksy has, I have called historical classics. Now, this refers to both actual history as well as literary classics, and it runs a really wide timeline because she is inspired by a lot of medieval things, historical garb, historical clothing pieces, as well as things like Pride and Prejudice or Bram Stoker's Dracula, very much running from the medieval period up to 18th, 19th century literature and poetry. She's worn some Edgar Allan Poe type outfits. One of my favorite videos that she's done was her week dressing as Jane Austen characters. I'm definitely going to link that below. That's probably one of my absolute favorite videos that she's done, mainly because I'm also a huge Pride and Prejudice fan. But she also does an incredible Lizzie cosplay from the 2005 movie. It's impeccable. But this one was a really fun one to find some patterns for, and I think I'm really going to blow you away with some of the patterns that I found that meet this aesthetic because I was so impressed with the ones that I found. So let's get into this list. Starting with a medieval-inspired piece, this is the Chainmail Slipover by Hannah of Herb Garden Knitwear. I had to start with this pattern. This is a pattern that Hannah developed a couple of years ago, and I actually provided the name for this pattern because when she showed it off, the seed stitch reminded me of chainmail, as well as the little welts that go along the neckline and the bottom of the vest. I really felt that that kind of spoke to a piece of mail and the way that it would be woven into like a tabard or something like that, and really gives that medieval look. I also think this one really speaks to one of Rachel's current favorite styles of clothing, which she calls modieval, because it is inspired by the 1960s reinterpretation of the medieval period. So I feel like this is a really great option for that because it kind of looks a little bit like a 1960s silhouette with that high neckline, really straight kind of boxy cut. And especially if you wear it over a short mini dress like Hannah is in the picture here. I do want to point out one thing about this pattern. This is definitely more of an intermediate pattern. There are some really tricky techniques in this piece, so I would recommend waiting until you have a bit more experience to do it if you are a beginner knitter. The next pattern on my list is the I Am No Man pullover by Nicole Larkin York, otherwise known as Common Thread. This pattern technically fits under more than one of Rachel's aesthetics, but the second one is coming up later on, and I felt that it fit this aesthetic a little bit more, so I've included it here in Historical Classics. This one is inspired by Éowyn of Lord of the Rings, particularly the most badass scene in the entire movie franchise, where she kills the Witch King of Angmar, and he says that no man can kill him, and she rips off her helmet and says, "I am no man." The best part of all of Lord of the Rings, in my opinion. I'm biased though. But anyway, this is such a cool top. It is an all over seed stitch pattern framed with the most gorgeous cable detailing that makes it look like faux seaming. From the different pattern examples that I've seen of this, you could either do short sleeves, 3/4 length sleeves, or even long sleeves. And my favorite version is a long sleeve version that has slight bell sleeves, and the cable running down the arm breaks off at the end and frames this like little cutout to the bell sleeve with that cable detailing continuing. So gorgeous. And especially if you knit this in a gray yarn or a silvery toned yarn, you're going to get more of that chainmail effect. And I really love it. I think it's absolutely beautiful. And I just love the inspiration behind it as well. So I thought this one was very appropriate. Jumping ahead several centuries, the next pattern in this aesthetic is the Unelma blouse by Mayhem Handmade. And I hope I pronounced the pattern name correctly. I've never seen that before. But this one just screams 19th century poet to me, or Gibson girl, or anything that's like turn of the 20th century, maybe even earlier 19th century. I absolutely love it. It does have a Victorian flair to it, but more of the romantic side of Victorian. I love this one because there's so much detailing on it that really highlights the shape. This pattern is incredibly detailed, and there's so many little bits and pieces to it that really highlight your figure. And the blouse is meant to be worn with, I think, 0 to 2 centimeters of negative ease. So it is meant to be a really tightly fitting sweater. It also has a lot of bust shaping and waist shaping to ensure that it fits you very well. The only problem with this pattern is that it's currently unavailable. Now, the pattern designer is currently working on it to bring it up to the standard of her more recent patterns. So I'm hopeful that it'll be back on the market on Ravelry very quickly, or on her website as well. So I will include a link to probably the Ravelry listing because that will be the first one to be updated. But I'm really hopeful that this will come back out very soon because it's so stunning, and I think it would be really great for anyone who wants to do a little bit of cosplay styling in their hand knit wardrobe. Now, if you want to wear something historical but you're not into the feminine styling, this next pattern might be for you. This is the Walrus by the Stitchin' Witch. And this is a waistcoat pattern. I love the styling on this one. This one also could have worked with another one of the aesthetics that I'm going to share later in the video, but I wanted to include it here because I could imagine this being worn over a big blousy shirt. Maybe the one that I'm wearing now, this is just a button-up linen shirt, or I have another one that has nice balloony sleeves, and I think this would be so cute over top of that. It's written as an all-encompassing pattern that you should be able to play around with and custom fit to your measurements. In the description, the designer has said that it is meant to be worn for all genders. You could crop it, you could lengthen it, you could add waist shaping, you could not add waist shaping, and really make it fit your particular body and style requirements. I also don't mind that this is knit flat and seamed, which normally I would be like, I don't know. And that's because of the points on the front of the vest. If you were doing this in the round, you would have to do maybe some short row shaping or something to really create those points. But I feel like by doing the pattern flat, those might be a little easier to manage. There's also a really cute pocket on the front that it's meant to be for a pocket watch because that's what waistcoats were initially, like that's where men would keep their pocket watches when they wore a waistcoat. Women too during some time periods, but it was more predominantly a men's fashion item. But I really love that this is something that could work for any type of wardrobe and any type of styling. Because personally, I would wear this kind of with like a long flowy skirt and kind of play into that like turn of the century Anne of Green Gables teacher vibe type thing. But it would also look really nice with some nice trousers and like I said, a big puffy sleeved white shirt. I think this would be such a fun piece to have in your wardrobe. And to round out this category, I have a couple of pieces that are not necessarily inspired by outfits that Rachel has worn, but more so her interests. And in the historical classics section, that means pieces in history. So one of the last patterns that I want to share with you in this aesthetic is two patterns combined together. They are separate patterns to purchase, but I have put them together here just because one's a cardigan and one's a sweater, but they're inspired by the same thing. And that is the Unicorn Tapestry Cardigan and Sweater by Tamara Jordan. You know by now, if you've watched any of my pattern roundup videos, Tamara is one of my favorite designers to hype up because her patterns are so incredibly detailed and they always have beautiful finishes and really great sizing. This one is no exception. This is a pattern that Tamara worked on for a few years to get right. She was inspired by the famous unicorn tapestry I think it's in the cloisters in New York. If I'm wrong, I'll put the correct place on the screen. But this is a really famous tapestry from the medieval era. And Tamara was so inspired by this tapestry that she taught herself how to do intarsia knitting specifically so she could create these patterns. And I think that's such a cool story. It definitely makes me want to learn how to do intarsia, I'll tell you that much. I'm still kind of scared of it, but these patterns are so gorgeous. But I really feel like they speak to Rachel Maksy's historical classic aesthetic of fashion because she's also very much inspired by historical elements or actual pieces of historical clothing or historical art. I know I've seen videos where she's like replicated armor detailing and stuff like that. So this is really something that also speaks to her aesthetic, and I thought it was so cool and so unique, and I really wanted to share it. Now the last pattern I want to share in this aesthetic is one that's a little off the beaten path, and the reason why I've decided to include it in this collection of patterns and in this aesthetic is that one of my favorite things about watching Rachel's videos is how much she teaches me as well. I love how excited she is to learn things and to share those with others, and she makes learning something new really fun. So I wanted to share The Light Academia by Sharon Hartley. This one I was inspired to include this one just because it reminds me of how at the beginning of each of Rachel's videos, especially if she's going to be doing a DIY project or a sewing project, she'll bring out her Blackbird and she'll talk about her inspiration and the process that she's going to go through, kind of like a professor. And that kind of made me think of The Light Academia because, of course, academia, it's about that type of aesthetic. Dark academia is more popular, but I felt that the light academia sweater better suited this aesthetic and this list and had a better place here. And I really loved that it kind of encompasses the vibe that Rachel puts off, not necessarily a carbon copy of something that she has worn. This is me interpreting her aesthetic and finding a knitting pattern that showcases that. So this one was a little offbeat compared to the others. It wasn't a direct comparison or direct inspiration, but I wanted to include it nonetheless. And also, if you wanted something that is less costumey, but still wanted to knit a pattern that was kind of inspired by Rachel's aesthetic, this is another great choice. The next one of the aesthetics I'm going to share in this video will come as no surprise if you've ever seen any of Rachel's videos. It's Hobbit core! If you don't already know, Rachel talks a lot about the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit. She dresses up in Hobbit-inspired outfits a lot of the time. She's done entire videos about it. Her dog's name is Frodo. She's just a really big fan of Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit, rightly so. And I really wanted to find some patterns that met that aesthetic. I did not have any trouble. Two of them are from one of my favorite designers, but that's because she does stuff inspired by Lord of the Rings, so like it made sense. But I did not at all find it difficult to find patterns inspired by the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit. The first pattern on this list is Edoras by Melanie Roundtree. Melanie's one of my favorite designers. She's a smaller, less well-known designer, and I really feel like her stuff should be more widely known. Her patterns are exquisite. They're incredibly detailed. The fit is immaculate, and Edoras is no exception. Now, although this one is not directly inspired by hobbits, this one is also AON inspired. It really fits with the aesthetic of something inspired by Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit. This pattern is really cool because it's meant to mimic wearing a peasant blouse underneath a dirndl or some other type of vest piece. And you can pick and choose which parts of this pattern that you would like to include in your final piece. Of course, that dirndl tank top style segment is the main part of the pattern, but then you can choose whether or not to add on long sleeves and a little high neck section to make it look like you are wearing a peasant blouse underneath. Now, those sections are knit with mohair, and if mohair just isn't something that you like to work with, you could also choose a suri if you would like something that is still nice and soft and floaty without being itchy, if you're sensitive to mohair. But I really love this pattern because it's really dancing the line with cosplay vibes, but also could be just a standard top that you make, and I really love it for that. And especially because it's inspired by Lord of the Rings. Now, the next pattern on my list is Melanie's latest pattern. And if you haven't heard of this pattern, let me introduce you to the Forests of Arda. This pattern comes in both a cardigan version and a pullover version. And it's incredible. I think this is one of the coolest designs that I've ever seen. It's incredibly detailed. I watched Melanie develop this over on her Instagram last year, and it just inspires me so much. It's so incredible, and it's definitely a piece that is going to just stand out. I haven't decided yet whether I want to make the cardigan or the pullover. I'm leaning towards the cardigan and making myself a really lovely wool coat that's knitted. I just think it would be such a standout piece, but it will require a lot of commitment. I think this pattern is going to be incredibly worth that commitment though. It is a top-down steeked pattern. So the pullover is not steeked, but the cardigan is steeked. And it involves 2-color cable color work. That's something that I've never done before. I was tempted to join the test knit last year, but I chose not to simply because there were too many techniques that I hadn't done before, and I did not want to try and learn them while on a tight timeline of needing to finish it by the end of a test timeline. But this pattern is absolutely incredible, and I think it totally fits the Hobbit core aesthetic. Maybe it's verging more into Elven territory, Rivendell territory, but Rachel is also a big fan of the elves. She has cosplayed as Arwen a few times, and she looks stunning in her Arwen cosplay. But this is a piece that I feel really meets that aesthetic. The next pattern is more solidly in the Hobbit territory of Hobbitcore, and this is the Ribblesdale vest by Lily Kate France. This is a brioche vest, 1-color brioche, and it just looks so cozy and so just comforting like a hobbit is, especially knit up in the dark green of the sample photo that I've put on the screen here. This just screams hobbit core to me, and I think it would look so good with a pair of brown trouser pants, a nice big linen shirt like this one. Really keep all those hobbity vibes going, because a hobbit is meant to be comfortable and cozy, and what's more comfortable and cozy than a brioche vest? Now, the last pattern that I want to share in this segment is actually 2 patterns. Again, like the unicorn tapestry one, these are patterns that are sold separately, but they are essentially the same pattern, albeit this one, it's the same shape of pattern. There's just 2 different sizing options that you could purchase. This is the Choose Your Fellowship by Sarah L. Kelly, and it's sold in a women's version and a men's version. Now, if you want to pick either or, you're not limited to choosing one based on your gender. You could totally pick whichever one of them works better for you. The women's one has been designed to a women's standard sizing chart. The men's version has been sized based on a standard men's sizing chart. So keep those in mind if you're choosing between the 2. The key difference between the 2, based on what the designer has said, is that the women's fit will have a shorter yoke and narrower shoulders. The men's version will have a deeper yoke and a wider shoulder fit. So those are the key differences if you're choosing between which one to buy for yourself or for whoever you would like to make it for. But this is one of those patterns that is a choose your own adventure, hence the name Choose Your Fellowship, because there are several different colorwork motifs that you can choose from to create your sweater. And you're under no pressure to use all of those charts all the way down, as well as down the sleeves. There are versions where the sleeves are left stockinette and there's just a little bit of colorwork at the bottom, or you could just do a yoke if you only wanted to do color work on the yoke. It really is a choose what works for you type of pattern. Now, I would just find it so addicting to want to include all of the different colorwork motifs, so I would probably do all over colorwork as well. But there's been some really great examples in the pattern listing on Ravelry that show how people have interpreted it, the colors that they've used, whether they've gone for all Hobbit themed motifs, if they've done some of the Mordor inspired motifs, whether they've done the gamut of all kinds of different ones to make it all Lord of the Rings themed. So many different choices, and I think that is such a fun way to make a colorwork pattern, and especially one inspired by Lord of the Rings, which is such a beloved book and movie series. Sorry for the change in filming location. I had to vacate the living room. My husband had some friends coming over, and I did not have as much time to film as I thought I did, or I just take longer to film than I think I do. So now in our bedroom, so if you hear any noises in the background, that's my husband and his friends playing tabletop games. But anyway, let's continue with my list. The next aesthetic that I have picked out is called Frolicking and Whimsy. And this is kind of like Rachel's version of cottagecore, but it's cottagecore with a really fun twist on it. She wears a lot of really what could be construed as silly things, but they're really unique to her interests, and they're just really fun and pretty, fairy-like at times. So this is all going to be those really fun silhouettes. Starting with the Avenham cardigan, I hope I pronounced correctly, by Lily Kate France. Now this is a pattern that I've included because it is directly related to a top that Rachel made. She made a top with terrarium sleeves, so they were very thin, gauzy sleeves that she put ferns and other flowers inside, and I really feel like the Avenham cardigan speaks to that same aesthetic because they are these hugely dramatic, voluminous sleeves made with mohair. Like I mentioned with one of the previous patterns on this list, if mohair is something that you are particularly sensitive to, you could always use Surrey instead. But I love this cardigan because it is very fun, very whimsical. You know, looking at it, it doesn't look very practical, but clothing doesn't always have to be practical. Sometimes it can be just for fun, and that's how I feel about this cardigan, and that's how I think Rachel felt about her terrarium sleeve top. There was no practicality to it whatsoever, but it made her happy, and clothing should always make you happy. So that's why I included this pattern. This next pattern, I think, was one of the very first ones that I put on my list of things inspired by Rachel Maksy. It is A Secret Strawberry Garden by Avril Bonici. I hope I pronounced correctly. If not, I do apologize. This is a strawberry sleeved top. Now this one involves a little bit of crochet, so if you are new to crochet and you're mainly a knitter, or if you're only a knitter, you've never done crochet, you might need to look up some tutorials to learn how to do some of the little finishing elements to this top. The top itself is knitted. It's the strawberries that are both knitted and crocheted, because the strawberries themselves are knitted, but the little leaves and the flowers that go with it are all crocheted. This looks like such a fun top, and it also speaks to that terrarium sleeve vibe from the Avenham cardigan. One of the things that I find particularly indicative of Rachel's style is that added whimsy, and what's more whimsical than adding strawberries to your sleeves for a top? Especially a puffed sleeve. That's a look that Rachel does quite a lot, and I really feel that these kind of speak to her whimsical aesthetic. Now, what is more whimsical than a swooshy skirt? And yes, I have a knitting pattern that is a swooshy skirt. This is the Skeeter skirt by Maya Deglan. I hope I pronounced correctly. She goes as Maya Tinks online, and this is such an incredible pattern. I did not test this, but I know friends who did and other friends who have purchased it since. It is on my list of things that I would like to make because it is a circle skirt with pockets designed for any gauge. So this skirt is incredibly customizable, and it's a little tricky to see what the max size is, because in one section it says that it's graded to a 60-inch waist, and in another section it says it's graded to a 68-inch waist. So I don't quite know which one is true, but if so, either option is incredibly size inclusive. And there are also custom lengths to this dress. So the suggested lengths are a micro, a mini, above knee, below knee, midi, and maxi. And we know what Rachel Maksy would go for. She would go for the big full skirt. Now, I don't know if I want a knitted skirt that's long. I probably would stop at either below the knee or midi, just because I think that would be a really great versatile length. But I would also like to do a nice, cute little flirty mini skirt. There are also two flare options to this pattern. There is both the large flare and the small flare. The large flare is pretty much identical to what you would cut for a circle skirt if you were sewing a skirt. So you can get incredible swoosh factor from this particular pattern. Now, you might be thinking, wait, is a skirt that's knitted going to really have that same element of swoosh as a fabric skirt would? It will if you pick the right yarn. So I would highly recommend choosing a yarn that has at least a partial amount of a plant fiber, or a silk as well. Silk is technically classified as an animal fiber, but it acts like a plant fiber. But I would always use a yarn that involves a little bit of either a cotton, a silk, a linen, bamboo, lyocell, any of those options. That's going to give you a really great drape to the fabric that you knit. I don't know if I would do 100% wool yarn. Maybe a merino. It really depends, especially if you knit on a loose gauge. You might get a nice flowy skirt that would also keep you nice and toasty in the wintertime. But this one I think I would rather do in a plant-based fiber to really get that maximum swish factor. The next pattern in this aesthetic is the Sugar Plum Crop by Jamie Hoffman, otherwise known as Knitosophy. This is such a dramatic sleeved top, and I love that there are some really cute details to it as well. This is one that really mimics those gigantic sleeves like Rachel's terrarium sleeve top that she made, and it really creates a fun silhouette that speaks to all whimsy and frolicking. This one features some beautiful lace work down the front of the top, as well as lace along the bottom of the hem of the top and the hem of the sleeves. And I really feel like that gives it a really whimsical, very feminine vibe to it, particularly on the ends of the sleeves and the hem, because it mimics actual attached lace onto a top. So this one is just super cute, super fun, definitely whimsical, very Rachel Maksy. Now, if you want those big, voluminous, dramatic sleeves, but you want long sleeves, this next pattern is for you. This is Menuet by Tricot Design MCL, one of my favorite designers. She's local to me. She's only one province over in New Brunswick. And this top is very much historically inspired, but I included it with whimsy because we all need a whimsical puff-sleeved blouse. This one I really like because, similar to the Sugar Plum Crop, there are some lace details to it that really make it pop. Unlike the Sugar Plum, this one features all over lace over the body of the top, and it's done in a very repeatable patterned way that makes it look so cute. It kind of reminds me of that little rosebud pattern that you can find on cotton sometimes. And this one adds a little element of crochet to create that shell stitch edging along the top of the neck. It's just a little detail, but I feel that it really elevates the top. Something to note with the Menuet pattern is that size 4XL and 5XL haven't been tested yet. So if you'd like to knit either the 60.5-inch bust or the 64.5-inch bust, you can get in contact with Marie and she will gift you the pattern in exchange for feedback. So if either of those sizes work for you and you're interested in this pattern, give her a little message and see. And now for the last pattern in the frolicking and whimsy category, this is Fairy Ring by Katie Green. Of course, I had to include something with mushrooms on it. Rachel is a big mushroom fan, and I mean that literally because one time she made a hat all made out of foam to look like a mushroom cap. It was so cute. She's also done a sewing DIY where she made red cap mushroom sleeves. Super cute, super fun. So I really wanted to bring the mushies into this list. This pattern is so cute. It's an all over colorwork circular yoke cardigan that is steeked. I know steeking can be scary, but I feel like this would be a really fun one to encourage you to try steeking because it's such a fun pattern. Mushrooms are so cute, especially the red cap ones. I really love that this is a nice all over kind of woodsy vibed sweater. So you have the bright mushrooms along the yoke, but then the rest of the sweater is kept very neutral, very woodsy with that dark brown and a little bit of green. I feel like it just keeps it in that woodsy theme, and I really like that. Also, if you are intimidated by doing a steek and you want to try it on a smaller amount, this pattern comes from child sized all the way up to adult size. So you could start off by making a child version if you have a small child in your life and you wanted to try it out before committing to making an adult version for yourself. There's always that option. The next aesthetic in my list is one that will come as no surprise if you're familiar with Rachel's work, is Whiskey Grandpa. This is a really fun kind of turn of the century inspired style, kind of expressed through wearing thermals, loose linen pants, a lot of suspenders. I've also kind of lumped together some of her outfits that she wears where she has on a pinafore style dress over a blouse or over a top. So I've got some options in here that are both kind of masculine themed but also feminine themed. Starting off with probably the most appropriate pattern in this grouping, the Whiskey Grandpa Henley by Honeysuckle Knit Goods. This one caught me completely by surprise when I was doing my search for more patterns for this list. I think I just typed in whiskey to see what would come up, and this was one of the very top patterns, and it was size inclusive, so I love that. This one is meant to look like a Henley, but also more of a traditional old-fashioned Henley. So not the nice tight fitting ones of today. This one is loosely fitting. So this one has balloon sleeves, which you really wouldn't see in a modern Henley. So this one is harkening back to that older fashioned style. The picture that I've shown is very dark. It's kind of hard to tell what it looks like. But one of the other versions shows it styled underneath a pair of overalls in a beige color. So it is a little easier to see. But this one just looks so comfortable and cozy. I could definitely see myself wearing it around the house as something just to like keep me cozy and warm if I'm doing like chores around the house or for sitting outside and having a bonfire or something like that. And it really speaks to that sort of Whiskey Grandpa style. And what would the Whiskey Grandpa style be within a Grandpa style cardigan? This is Postscript by Jennifer L. Peroncini. I am such a big fan of Jen's patterns, and this one looks super, super cozy. This is an all-over waffle knit grandpa style cardigan with a really big ribbed collar. I love how Jen has styled this, and the particular photo that I chose just looks so fun. It's definitely leaning into that grandpa style vibe of lounging with your drink, of getting cozy as if you're wearing a house coat, but you're not because you're wearing a knitted cardigan. But I could also see this as a cardigan that you would wear out, maybe like a coat instead of wearing an actual coat if it's in between weather or in between seasons rather, or if you are a professor and you're at the top of the class and you're wanting to be very academic looking. Like, so many options for this, and I just love the attention to detail in Jen's patterns. The sizing is immaculate. The way that they look at all the different parts of your body in order to get the right fit all across the piece, just immaculate. Now, if you want some more layering options for a Whiskey Grandpa style, I recommend the Velvet Moss Vest by Isabella Clarke of 100 Acre Wool. I have been in love with this pattern since I saw it come out only a couple of months ago. It's one that's meant to use hand spun yarn, so if you are a hand spinner, this might be a great option for you. This vest is knit sideways, and it is all over color work because you have two different colors, your hand spun color and a more commercial color. And I just love the texture detail. It really mimics a herringbone fabric. So if you were to make this, I probably would recommend finding some sort of hand spun yarn or hand spun inspired yarn. But something along those lines would probably help give you that herringbone look to the finished fabric. I especially love the colors that Isabella used in hers. The really like honeyed caramel mixed with the like brownish gray. What a great combination, especially if you're going for a whiskey grandpa vibe. Now here's a pattern where we kind of leave some of the more masculine shaped items behind and move over into some more feminine themed whiskey grandpa vibes. This is the all fit jumper skirt knit edition. And if you're a crocheter and you like my content and you would like to see some crocheted patterns, this one is for you because I'm sharing the knit version, but there is a crocheted version. So I am only a knitter, therefore I'm only ever going to discuss knitted patterns because I can't really speak to a crocheted pattern without having the skills behind that. But I'll mention it here just in case you are a crocheter and you would prefer a crocheted option to this. But I love this pattern and I will definitely be knitting this at some point because it is a jumper style skirt. This is something that's just a great layering piece to have in your wardrobe. I know myself, I love wearing this style. Well, I would if I had any in my wardrobe, but I have yet to find one that fits me properly because I'm so large chested. But this one I feel would fit so much better because it's knitted and I can add in bust darts if I need to. This one is such a fun look. The waistband of this is done using a drawstring. I think I would probably use an elastic instead, but you could choose whichever one works for you. Now this is a relatively newer designer. I haven't really seen much from her, but she mentions that she has a lot of patterns on Ribbler, and I'm not familiar with Ribbler. It's mainly for crocheted patterns. I think it's similar to like a pay hip or something like that, but I'm not familiar with it. So if you know anything about it, please leave it in the comments below. But this pattern just looks incredibly fun. Yes, you'll need a little bit of hardware to go with it, or you could, instead of using the little clips, you could put in buttonholes instead. But I think I would rather have those suspender clips just for stability compared to the strain that a buttonhole would take. I absolutely love this pattern. I think it's so fun, and it's something that I definitely want to make. Now, if you have an overall styled skirt and you need a top for underneath it, I have two options for you. The first one is the Olivia sweater by Varind Rose. This is a pattern that I have in my queue. I haven't found the right yarn for it yet, but I'm really excited to make it once I do. It is so pretty. It has a little bit of mohair right across the chest to give it sort of a sheer look. Again, if mohair is too itchy for you, you could use Surrey or even more of just a thin alpaca that doesn't have fluff to it if you want that type of a vibe. But this one has really beautiful 3/4 length bishop sleeves. And I love the detailing on this pattern. I love the cuffs that are knitted sideways that really give you some nice stretch for your sleeves so nothing is too tight on your arm. There's a really lovely back section that also has that sheer bit of mohair, and of course the little baubles. They're so cute. The other option for a top you could wear under the overall skirt is the Ruffle Crush Top by Nicole Thorsten Knits. This is a pattern that came out in 2020, and I'm absolutely shocked by the few number of projects that it has listed on Ravelry. It's such a cute square-necked t-shirt with ruffle edges on the sleeves and the hem. This is definitely something that I would get a lot of wear out in my wardrobe, so I'm adding this one to my queue. But it's such a fun, simple style. I like that unlike the Olivia blouse that comes all the way up to your neck, this one is a deeper cut. So this one is better if you are wanting to wear it in the warmer months. This would be a great top to wear layered under something like a dirndl or an overall skirt, maybe the knitted one that I shared a little while ago, or a fabric one instead. But it's such a great option to have for adding just a little bit of flair to your outfit because it is generally a t-shirt. It just has those added details that give it so much oomph. Something else to keep in mind with this top is that sizes extra large to 5XL have not been tested, so the designer has left a note in the Ravelry page that if you would like to knit any of those sizes, you could get in touch with her and she will gift you the pattern in exchange for feedback. And now for my final aesthetic for Rachel Maksy. And this is one that one could say is her final form. It is floor troll. If you're not familiar with that, if that sounds so wild and crazy to you, all you need to do is watch any of her videos, especially her sewing videos, and find out she spends a lot of time on the floor. So Rachel's floor troll aesthetic is all about comfort and coziness while she's working. And it needs to be something that can give her freedom of movement, freedom to lounge on the floor, keep her nice and warm in the winter. And I have a couple of patterns to round up this video that fit very nicely into that aesthetic. The first is the Edith cardigan by Pam Allen, and this is a pattern that I have knit myself and I absolutely love it. It's such a cozy fit. It feels like wearing a house coat, but it's a little nicer because it's a cardigan. This one is meant to be a longer style cardigan with nice big cozy pockets and a really fun broken rib along the front sides of the opening of the cardigan. The bottom and the cuffs of the sleeves are also done in regular ribbing. I knit mine out of Drops Air, which is a blown style yarn, and I would highly recommend using a lighter style yarn like that to get the same floaty, cozy factor of this particular pattern. And one thing that I changed about it that I would recommend is moving the location of the pockets. The pockets are actually kind of weird the way they're done in the pattern. They have them on the sides, kind of like where a side seam would be of the pattern, instead of at the front. So I've included instructions in my Ravelry notes about how I chose where to put my pockets. So if you want to know more about that, check out my Ravelry project page. Now, something that also suits the floor troll aesthetic, but is a little more kind of cozy homespun cabin style, is this next pattern. Are you at all surprised that I'm including the Heirloom Quilt Cardigan by Katrin Seeberger? I'm not surprised. This one really speaks floor troll to me in the best way. This one could also kind of work with Whiskey Grandpa because it's similar to finding like a cozy quilt in the cabin and throwing it over yourself to keep warm while you're working. But I really feel like it also suits the floor troll aesthetic, especially because it's meant to be a really big and boxy cardigan. It's not meant to fit you very, very tightly. There's only 3 sizes, but they are very broad. I know myself, I would probably choose the middle size to fit me comfortably, but I absolutely love it because it's a great way to use up scraps as well. You can play around with having a dedicated color palette, or you could just kind of go wild and crazy and just choose mini skeins as and when you prefer. The only thing that I would possibly change about this is I would add another set of quilt blocks at the bottom to make it a longer cardigan, but you could just keep it as the cropped style as well. And now for my final pattern in the floor troll segment and of the video entirely. This is the Second Avenue Sweatpants by Brianna Lupino of the Little Wolf Knits. You might be thinking, why have I included a pattern for sweatpants in this video? Well, if you know Rachel, especially in the wintertime when she wants to stay warm and cozy, she'll often wear pajama pants under her long skirts. It's both to keep her warm and cozy, but also because she needs to be comfy. And I love that because it also kind of plays into the whole work from home aesthetic where you are dressed up from the waist up, but you are pajamas from the waist down. So it kind of plays into that sort of a vibe. And I'm really excited about the Second Avenue sweatpants because not only are they size inclusive sweatpants with pockets, with a drawstring, they are knit up using a boucle yarn. So I don't know if the trend has faded yet for boucle yarn or if it's still really, really popular, but that's what I would use for these patterns to get the ultimate cozy factor without a bunch of added weight to it. And if you don't want to wear them as sweatpants, these would also be a great option for pajama pants to keep you nice and cozy. Definitely a floor troll vibe. And that wraps up my list of my top 25 knitting patterns inspired by Rachel Maksy. I really hope you enjoyed this video and this list of patterns. I know it's a little different from what I've done in the past, and this one was really done for myself because I love Rachel Maksy. I love her content, and I found all kinds of patterns that really spoke to her aesthetic vibe or her various aesthetic vibes. And I just thought it'd be fun to put it all together. So I hope you found something in this list that you like, and if you know someone else who might like this pattern roundup, I hope you share it with them. And I hope if you haven't seen her content, you check out Rachel Maksy. Her content is incredible. It's so happy, it's so cozy. It's really the perfect cozy vibe, and I love her content. I love watching it, so I highly recommend you check out her channel if you haven't before. If you're new here, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. And if you're a returning viewer, thank you so much for coming back. It really means a lot to me. While you're here, it would help my channel if you could like this video, subscribe to my channel, and please leave me a comment below. Let me know your favorite patterns from this video. Let me know your favorite Rachel Maksy videos. Whatever you would like to share, let's have a great conversation in the comments. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope you all take care and happy knitting!